Tottenham Hotspur break the curse and win a game of football before an international break for the first time since October 2023. Can you believe it? I can't really believe it. I mean, we away from home, early kickoff, everything was stacked against us and we actually went and did it. I'm so proud of the boys. But no, in all seriousness, not a perfect performance, but a performance where we got over the line and we did enough with a couple of moments of magic from a few star players in there. And the defensive performance in the second half was quite pleasing in terms of how we shut out Leeds in that final half an hour. There's some interesting stuff tactically, some work-ons that I still want to talk about. And also some good things I want to talk about, especially one man's performance, which was just absolutely sublime. But I wanted to run through sort of, obviously, the key moments in the game first, sort of from minute 1 to minute 90. And I mean, in minute 1, I lost my head a little bit at Vicario today, and I think he did make up for it with some good saves in the second half, to be fair to him, and you've got to give him credit when that kind of thing happens, when a player sort of turns around their performance in small ways. But in the first minute, you sort of saw what we've been seeing quite a lot recently, a man who just does not look comfortable in goal, who does not look comfortable in terms of his decision making, in terms of how he's carrying out those decisions that he's then making. And Leeds won a set piece, I think it was 3 or 4 minutes into the game, and it sort of lofted to the back post. Vicario comes out to try and get the ball, to try and punch it away or catch it, or whatever. He's not even within like 2 meters of it. It's the most bizarre decision. And Joe Rodon, who's kind of coming in at the back post here, apologies for the blurry screenshots as well. They are just quite blurry today. I don't know why the game when I watched back the game it was blurry like that. But Joe Rodon coming in at the back stick, heading against the post, and that was a warning sign in the opening minutes. That was a warning sign for Vicario and a warning sign for Spurs. I mean, more of a warning sign that we couldn't really trust our goalkeeper. But there you go. And he was frustrating in the first half, I think. And I've wanted to have a sort of larger conversation around Vicario for a little while, and I have had that conversation. I've got quite a bit of backlash for it, but in terms of our long-term future as our number one, I'm still yet to be convinced. I'm still not convinced. I think his game's regressed a little bit at the start of this season, but as I said, got better in the second half. But moving into the game, we started to settle really after that, and we did have the better of the first half, especially the opening 35 minutes. And Xavi Simons in the 10. I mean, I don't think he was amazing today in the table. Like in the final third, I want to see him sort of accelerate those final actions a little bit better. I want to see him sort of taking the initiative with that final decisive action a little bit more. But in terms of sort of the positions he was picking up, the ball carrying, sort of creating little spaces and little opportunities in that final third, and even in the middle third of the pitch as well, he was excellent. And this was the first little bit of real quality you saw from him, picking the ball up here, dragging Jayden Bogle sort of in towards him and creating that space for a doggy on the overlap. But then Jayden Bogle thought he had the pass covered off, but a little shift inside from Xavi, and then the reverse ball to a doggy created an opportunity for a doggy. And I think there were times today when a doggy got into great positions. I thought he had a really good game today, but there were also moments of just slight hesitation and a slight lack of quality in the final third from him still that have been quite frustrating. I mean, if you look here, Matisse Tell is making that run to the front post. He sort of gets in front of Pascal Struijk. There's a chance there to sort of flash the ball into him, but he sort of hits it at the goalkeeper, and it's not bad for him by any stretch. I mean, you know, in those kind of situations, a goalkeeper can always parry it out into a crowded penalty area, can cause havoc, and it was good from a doggy. I just do think there was some slight moments of hesitation from him in this kind of area, which he was getting himself into a lot in that game. But, you know, that was sort of a warning sign for Leeds, I guess, from Spurs in terms of what Xavi Simons can do, what he can produce, and a doggy on that left-hand side creating that overlap with Wilson Odobert moving centrally as well. So that was really nice to see. And again, the game was kind of, you know, falling in Tottenham's favour. We were sustaining a little bit. We were sustaining pressure quite well. We were sustaining our attacks, and 22 minutes into the game, Bentancur sort of nips in and wins it. It was a bit of a poor touch from him, but then he nips in and wins it right before Ampadu knocks it off to Mohamed Kudus, who plays the ball through to Matisse Tell. And in this position here from Tell, I'm thinking, right, maybe cut back inside, maybe look back for Bentancur, wait for Simons and Odobert to arrive in the box. He didn't want to do any waiting for anybody, and he did really, really well to actually fashion himself the opportunity. So he sort of, you know, took it a little bit wider. He drew in Pascal Struijk and he drew in Sean Longstaff towards him, and then gets a really nice shot off, actually, strikes the ball cleanly, gets a little deflection, which obviously takes it away from Kyle Darlow. And there is a little bit of luck there, but he does well in fashioning himself that opportunity. And I'm not going to lie, we've seen Richarlison in a similar position to that in recent weeks, and he'll sort of fall over, or he'll waste the opportunity, or he'll try and get into a physical battle with a defender and he'll lose out. And I think that is where Matisse Tel does have that little bit more intelligence, I think, when he's playing through the middle. I think, that separation that he can create, that instinct to get the shot off and to create the space for himself to get the shot off, I do think that is something that Matisse Tel has over Richarlison, and especially a confident Tel. And that was nice to see him getting into that position there, and the ball striking as well. Definitely something that he has over Richarlison. There's obviously areas that I think Richarlison is better than Tellin still at this point, but great ball striking, sort of gets it off, Pascal Struijk, deflection, and goes in, and Spurs are 1-0 up at this point. And at this point, you're thinking, right, keep control of the game. Sort of Leeds will be a little bit shell-shocked. The crowd was quietened after 20 minutes, but that didn't happen, obviously. 10 minutes later, Leeds create an opportunity, and it was kind of the first opportunity they'd had since our goal, or even since that Joe Rodon header in the first couple of minutes. We were looking quite comfortable at this point, but Dominic Calvert-Lewin makes a good run in here, and Jayden Bogle plays a really nice ball, actually, and Calvert-Lewin does just get just in front of Romero, but then when he knocks it down in here, you're really hoping Mickey van der Ven would be alive to this sort of second ball, and I think Mickey van der Ven was just slightly slow to react in there, and Brendan Aronson just gets in front of him, gets the ball, gets his shot off, which is deflected from, I don't know who actually deflected. It was either Romero or Van der Ven who got across and sort of it came off the bottom of their leg, deflected up. And that did make it a bit more difficult for Vicario, but I was frustrated with Vicario here actually because, look, again, like I said, it was difficult. Joe Hart did a piece of analysis on it at halftime and said how much more difficult that makes it for a goalkeeper. It sort of offsets your balance. It sort of makes you less strong in terms of how you can parry the ball. And I do take that into account. I don't think it's a Vicario mistake, but it's again one of those where it's a little bit weak. It's a little bit flappy. He sort of pushes it 2 yards out, right into Noah Okafor's path, who obviously taps it into an empty net, and Leeds are back in the game at this point. And I do think that after this, Spurs were a little bit shell-shocked. We lost our heads a little bit. We picked up a couple of needless yellow cards. Bentancur got one. Xavi, was it Simno? Kudus got one as well. And at this, I was thinking Kudus, is losing his head a little bit, despite how good he'd been in the opening half an hour. But we looked like we needed half time after we conceded that goal. And like I said, some sort of chances. But then Spurs fashioned a chance of their own. I think it was just inside added time at the end of the first half. Wilson Odobert latching onto a loose ball in the penalty area. Matisse Tel, by the way, some leap on him. Absolutely leaps like a salmon, heads it against the crossbar, and that was another opportunity created that, Tel did quite well with. I think, those two opportunities he had in the first half, the one for the goal and this one, I think there were tough situations that you've got to make something of that as a striker. That's what your job is as a striker, to make something of those little half chances. And I think he made a lot of those two half chances that he got in the first half, obviously scoring one of those and this one hitting the crossbar. And that was a real positive for me with his game today. And a nice ball from Wilson Odobert as well, just poking it up into that penalty area, causing a little bit of havoc, and that was good. But then we obviously got into the second half, and I wanted a response from Spurs in the second half. There were some issues with the double pivot in Bentancur and Paulinho, which I sort of kind of wanted addressed at half-time, but it didn't get addressed at half-time. We started the second half slightly on the back foot, and this was a big chance that Leeds had here with Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Okafor driving inside the pitch. He had the better of Porro up until this point, I felt, and drove inside the pitch. And here, Van der Ven and Romero, I think at this point, you can see Romero's body positioning here. He is about ready to step up, and Mickey van der Ven doesn't read that. And I think you either step up here as a defender to play Calvert-Lewin offside, or you read the danger and you cut out that passing lane. You don't allow Dominic Calvert-Lewin to receive the ball in the area that he did. But I think Mickey van der Ven was just caught slightly sleeping there at the start of the second half, and it allowed Calvert-Lewin to get into this position to turn there. And to be fair to him, Mickey van der Ven did get back in, and he did sort of cause a deflection on the ball, and it was a lovely save from Vicario actually, which is what I was saying about how he improved in the second half. It was a great save from him, but that was just a little bit sloppy at the start of the second half, and that maybe set the tone for the next 10 minutes up until Mohamed Kudus. What a player. What a player. I absolutely adore him. And this goal sort of summed up everything that I think he's about as a footballer. His work rate to close down Gudmundsson here, to not give Gudmundsson time on the ball to deal with it easily. And Gudmundsson panics because he knows that Kudus is breathing down his neck. And Kudus pinches the ball off him, drives inside the pitch. And in this position here, this is where he's so dangerous. Could he have slipped it into Matisse Tel there? Yes, absolutely. But also, the defender knows, Pascal Struijk knows that he can't just push Kudus inside, because Kudus can so comfortably go onto his right foot and play on his right foot. He's a player who loves to go to the byline as well, or loves to go on the outside as well as on the inside, and that's what makes him so unpredictable as a left-footed right winger. But this time he chooses to drive inside the pitch, and Pascal Struijk doesn't do badly, but again, Kudus getting the ball, getting the strike off, keeps it low, which is the key thing, of course, and he had a chance in the first half that he actually really spurned, where again it was a little bit of indecision from a doggy, but eventually laid it off to Kudus, and Kudus really should have scored in my opinion, or at least hit the target, and he blazed it wide, and this was sort of, I guess, his opportunity to make up for that, and drills it low into the bottom corner. Obviously takes that little deflection of Pascal Struijk, but I don't think it massively changed the trajectory of the ball. And just a lovely, lovely goal from Mohamed Kudus, his first goal in a Tottenham Hotspur shirt, and I was massively pleased with what I saw from him today. I mean, the amount of times, again, I'm going to talk about it in a second when we look into the more sort of, I guess, tactical elements of the game that I was happy with and not happy with, but the amount of times where we struggled in our build-up to progress the ball centrally, and we'd have to rely on giving the ball to Mohamed Kudus when he's got a man right on his back, when he's under pressure, and every single time, and that's not an exaggeration, every single time, that little ball roll that he does to sort of push the ball out of his feet and then drive inside the pitch, or the little body feint to sort of make his defender believe he's driving inside the pitch and then sort of swiveling around on the ball and facing him up. He's so good and so effective in helping us progress up the pitch, and without him, I'll be worried in terms of our ball progression, like really, really worried, which is what I'm going to talk about in a minute. But a lovely goal from Mohamed Kudus, and after that, sort of, I was quite happy with how we managed the game. I don't think Leeds had loads really up until the final sort of 5 minutes. There was a penalty shout, I think, from when Richarlison accidentally trod on Pascal Struijk's foot. But in my opinion, that's not a penalty. There's absolutely zero intent there. And he's looking at the ball. He's solely looking at the ball. And, we went from Xavi Simons in the 10, sort of shoring up that midfield a little bit more with Pap Sarr coming on and making it a midfield three of sort of those number 8s, which I liked. And I thought that was a good move from Thomas Frank. And then later on in the game, when you knew that Leeds were going to be lumping it long a little bit more, we brought on Kevin Danso, changed that back 3, which obviously we know Thomas Frank loves to do when we are winning, which again, I don't mind as well. And this was the only real chance they had in that final 20-25 minutes, with Dominic Calvert-Lewin winning this header here. It's probably one of the only times that he actually got a bit of change out of Romero in that second half, but winning the flick on, winning the ball, and it dropped. We were lucky here, actually. If it had flicked it on in sort of this area here, you had Sean Longstaff who was about to stride onto it, or Nemetra in there as well, but falls to Joe Perreault on the edge of the box, gets a really nice strike off, actually, Perreault, and it's a good save from Vicario. Again, it's one that you'd expect him to make, but it is a good save from Vicario, and that won us the game at the end of the day. That defensive performance in the second half won us the game. I know that people have sort of looked at the stats after the game and said, Spurs only created 0.6 expected goals and Leeds had, I think it was 1.6 or something. But a lot of that did come from Okafor's goal, which was a literal open goal. And there were loads of opportunities in the game, especially in the first half, where Spurs got themselves into great positions and manoeuvred good situations, but then our final ball, the final piece of decision making, the final bit of quality that we needed was just slightly off. But look, at the end of the day, we won the game, and that is all that matters. Before, in these tough away games, when you're going to a place like Ellen Road, they've still very much got that sort of rejuvenated feeling being back in the Premier League around the place, and it was loud today, and it was just a great win against a team who have, drew with Bournemouth last week, who are flying at home, took Bournemouth to the 93rd minute to equalise in that game. They've beaten teams like Wolves away from home this season. They've drawn with Newcastle at home as well, so don't underestimate that result, seriously. And again, I also wanted to point here the difference between this sort of save and the save that Vicario made in the first half. Again, I know this one was slightly easier, but pushes it away from danger. You had Nemetra, who was waiting to pounce on any sort of loose or flappy save from Vicario, and it was good to push that out of the way. And I think a doggy was the one who headed it behind in the end for the corner, but that was nice. And look, at the end of the day, like I said, a solid defensive performance in the second half, and that saw us over the line and won us the game. Now, like I said, with Mohamed Kudus, he's the one I wanted to talk about individually, because just so good. He's just so good in every area of what I'd want from a winger. Yeah, maybe sometimes I'd like him to be a little bit more decisive with his final action in terms of that quality into the area. But I actually think that's something that really was noticeable today in terms of some of the balls that he put into the penalty area early on in the first half, creating chances. Obviously got the assist for the Matisse Tell goal, took his goal really well, and was just so decisive with his actions in the final third today. But not just that. the duels that he wins, how strong he is, how quick he is, his defensive work rate as well. The sort of, he's a bit like Cuti Romero in terms of Romero's line breaking passes are one way in which we get out of sort of our own half and progress the ball through the thirds really nicely. But also now, Mohamed Kudus being sort of the ball being fired into him and allowing him to just do what he does really, beating men, using his sort of physical presence, winning those duels, sort of turning and facing play and driving forwards. That is another way. Those are probably the two ways in which we're really progressing the ball through the thirds, actually effectively at this point. And there are elements to our game which I don't think we're doing as effectively, but I mean, a full credit to him. He's instantly become one of our best players. He's instantly become so important to this team, to this system. I don't really know what we do if Mohamed Kudus gets injured. That would be a huge concern if Kudus was to pick up an injury at any point this season, because I do think we are quite reliant on him in a lot of ways. Like I said, progressing the ball up the pitch, that creativity, that sort of 1v1 threat in the final third, somebody you can just give the ball to and you know will retain possession and help us to sustain attacks. And I don't know what we do if he gets injured. That would be massively worrying. But I think the thing that I wanted to mainly talk about was our central ball progression. That was the negative for me today, and it's been the negative for a little while. I think our performance today was better out of possession than it was against Wolves, which is one of the work-ons I had from last week that I really wanted to see improved, especially at a ground like Ellen Road, was our press being good and sort of suffocating Leeds and what they were able to do. And I think that was really nice. I think Leeds played out from the back exceptionally well against Bournemouth, and that was an area that I was looking at thinking, oh, Bournemouth's press is really good actually. Is that an area that we are going to have to be really on it to stop today? And I do think we were on it. I think in that first half, Odegaard, Simmons, Tell, Kudus were picking their moments, but they were picking their moments together. They were pressing as a compact unit, and then they were sitting off when they knew it was sort of the situation where we needed to sit off. They were picking and choosing their moments a lot better than they were against Wolves. The intensity was much better than it was against Wolves, and that was pleasing, especially after a Champions League week, you know, playing 3 times in 7 days. That was really pleasing in my opinion from an out of possession standpoint. But in possession, these two were causing us issues today. João Paulinho and Rodrigo Bentancur, just constant sideways and backwards passing, a lack of bravery on the ball really for me. Sloppy moments too where Bentancur and Paulinho would just lose the ball under not much pressure. There were moments in the second half in particular when I like Paulinho and I like Bentancur, but I just don't think that either of them, I don't think they can play together. I think, you know, you were looking at the game and it was kind of, even though we were playing well in parts, it was crying out for a Lucas Bergvall, somebody who can just take the ball and carry it forwards or pick a pass. He's not an amazing progressive passer, Lucas Bergvall. He's an amazing progressive carrier, but Bentancur and Paulinho, I don't really see what they offer us in possession when they are playing together. You'd obviously sacrifice a little bit in possession for João Paulinho's out of possession prowess, but you don't need that with Bentancur. You don't need to be playing both of them together, and that led to lots of situations where, you know, you're trying to progress the ball centrally, you're trying to find Paulinho and Bentancur, and they are picking the ball up in these areas, picking the ball up off the centre-backs, off the full-backs, and you're looking for them to sort of turn and face play, to fire the ball into a Simmons or an Odegaard or a Kudus, to find those passes to get us up the pitch. And they're just not brave enough or have the ability to do that. That's not their game, and that leads us in a lot of ways to having an over-reliance on Romero to find those line-breaking passes like we've talked about, for Pedro Porro as well, who I don't think his best quality was there today, but also firing the ball into our wide players, Odegaard and Kudus having to drop deeper to receive the ball to help us get up the pitch, which harms us because you want Odegaard and Kudus receiving the ball up here in an ideal world, and Kudus is so good at that, and Odegaard's not bad at that either, that we can do that and we can use that. But there is becoming a bit of an over-reliance on Romero and on our wide players, and sort of we have become a team that a lot of our ball progression, a lot of the ways that we move up the pitch has come from those wider areas, and we're not doing it enough centrally. And I think Simmons in the 10 did help that and does help that. I think there were times today where he dropped deeper and he received the ball in these areas, you know, off the centre halves, or whether it was just a 5-yard pass that Paulinho or Bentancur felt comfortable playing to Xavi Simmons, and then he would help us to move the ball up the pitch, and his ball carrying us stuff is, you know, great. And I think that he was really good today, Xavi Simmons, in a lot of ways. Sort of, I do, again, like I said, I do want him to sort of accelerate those actions in the final third sometimes and sort of be a bit more decisive in terms of picking the pass or finding the space to shoot or creating that separation, a little bit more, sort of just accelerate those movements, if you know what I mean. But that will come. I'm not worried about that coming for Xavi Simmons in the slightest. That will just come with more game time, more trust, playing him in that number 10. The first game he started for us in the number 10, obviously came on there against Brighton, move there against Wolves in the second half, but that's the first game he started. I think it was massively positive, and I'd be shocked if that's not what we're doing moving forward after the international break in that area. But yeah, like I said, Paulinho and Bentancur just still not offering enough, not being brave enough, and like I said, also the realisation that that is not their game, and that is really harming how we're able to progress the ball centrally, I feel, and that is something that will hurt us. And I think that, if Kudus didn't come up with that moment of brilliance in the second half, I would have been shocked if Bergvall wasn't brought on or Archie Gray wasn't brought on for Bentancur in that sort of 55th, 60th minute, because at that point the game was sort of crying out for somebody to just be a little bit braver centrally, because obviously, teams are going to realise that, that is the way that we progress the ball, and that is where we are limited in the middle of the pitch, and that's where our strength lies out wide, and teams will work that out, and teams will really force us to try and progress the ball centrally. And if you're doing that with Paulinho and Bentancur in there, you're not going to find any joy, and that's going to be a real area that the opposition will target as the season moves forward. And I do think that's where Frank just has to be brave. Get a Bergvall in there, get a Gray in there, get a Sarr in there, get players who can actually offer you something on the ball in that double pivot, and that bravery in terms of two players who are limited with their on the ball ability in Paulinho and Bentancur, passing wise and carrying wise, I think. And yeah, that is a little frustration that I had, and something that I do want to see improve moving forward. But look, positives today, like I said, I don't think Mickey van der Ven was great in terms of how he dealt with his space at times, and how he was slightly late to things today, I felt, in terms of defending his penalty area, in terms of defending this area here. And, not a bad performance from Mickey van der Ven by any stretch of the imagination, but not great. I thought Romero was the one who really excelled in that role in that second half, and I thought he was excellent. A proper captain's performance from him today. Like I said, Kudus was man of the match. Xavi Simons was good. Matisse Tel was good. I think Audebert sort of had his moments slightly, but faded really in the game for large parts, and I don't think he was particularly effective today. But Destiny Udogie on the overlap was great, and there's still obvious work on Spurs. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect at all, but I think there were moments today that should give you real positivity, and I think that there's players in this side that can create something out of nothing. We've really got players who can win us games of football now. Hopefully Solanke and Kolo Muani are back soon. Hopefully Dejan Kulusevski is, getting closer and closer to a return to the pitch again, strengthening that squad once more. And when you look at that bench, you look at Sarr, Danso, Johnson, Richarlison, Bergvall, Gray, Spence, you look at that team, like, who's dropping out really when Kolo Muani, when Solanke, when Kulusevski are back in this side? We're going to have a big squad full of quality, and that is a positive thing. And look, we're second in the Premier League as things stand. Actually, no, we're not, because Arsenal are winning against West Ham, but we're going to be in the top four heading into the international break, and that is something that should be massively positive, of course, for us. And plenty of work on still, but if you are new to the channel, please like the video, please subscribe, that'd be greatly appreciated, and I will see you in the next one. Adios.